I'm Margaret in Windsor, and I was kidnapped. I'm reiterating this because it tells you what's going on, gives you some background, a little. I was kidnapped in 41, brought to Moulton, Alabama, where my identity was stolen, and I was given the name of a twin, Peggy Ann Dempsey, and later I married a Childers, and I still have to use that name. And I've put it up on YouTube, I've put it up on Facebook over the last years. I've put up about mind control murders, which I was writing about in 1976 till 80 when I was almost murdered. Nobody's been held accountable for any. I mean, it's ongoing, the crimes committed against me and my children, my father and mother, and my country. Uh, this has been allowed to happen in plain sight. So I want to get back to something that just happened. I've gotten some really nasty comments about my YouTube and Facebook. Rather than being compassionate and having empathy, so many have just been mean. From calling me an old hag and calling me nuts. Well, that's not true, and that's certainly been proven the last years. I'm talking about how many years that I have put up with living on the Appalachian Trail, trying to tell what was done to me. I'm still here and I'm still sane. And no, I'm not on any pills. I didn't forget my pill today. The only pills I've taken, well, I don't know, since when I wasn't taking blood pressure pills. I've taken over the last probably 20 years. High blood pressure. I take something for arthritis, inflammation that's caused because I'm allergic to chemicals. Something that's an odor to someone else is toxic to me, especially when it's been deliberately done. It's political. And it runs me from one place to the other, and you don't get a background check on me that's correct at all. I can't even say my name. Now that I recently put up where once again I tried to get a life insurance policy that my ex-husband signed. In fact, he dictated the divorce to my attorney, who was a good attorney in Atlanta. He didn't need somebody to dictate it to him. It had an attachment, just the way the attachment or addendum was to my father's forced abdication, 1936. My father's Edward VIII, who never had anything to do with Wallis Simpson. She married a double and became the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. The United States, the Illuminati, Sir Winston Churchill, you get into Roosevelt, you get into Rockefellers, Bilderbergers, Kennedys, and I don't know that I'm holding this correct, and I look pretty bad because I've really been through hell. I don't know another way to describe it. Run from one place to the other, inhaling toxic fumes, left walking on the side of the road and begging. And let me get back to this. I have tried repeatedly. I had a divorce that my husband dictated that would give me any, if he ever had anything, it would give me half of it, and alimony and child support. He never gave any of that. Maybe a little, but it stopped totally any attempt that he seemed to, because a lot was going on, and he moved back in at Laurelwood Apartments when I got the letter from the FBI in it was June the 23rd of 79, and it said ongoing investigation, national security involved. He had come back, and I explained to the manager that, well, she knew I had my lease and she had me sign it. And my ex-husband went with me, and she totally knew that it was my lease, my apartment. He didn't move in till a couple of months later, and he wasn't there all the time. My sons were having sugar put in their lifters, and the cars going out at 11 o'clock, and all kinds of scaring you to death. And anyway, the apartment was taken from me when I was gone for a few days to Texas, because so much had happened. This is the 1st of March or 8th of March of 80. And I'm telling this because I got out was supposed to go to his sister's, who was CPA Laura Childers Klein. She lives outside Austin now, but she lived. I was going to her place back then and promised a couple of weeks to stay there, and if I got a job, I'd bring my boys out there, which are her nephews, are supposed to be, unless John Childers has another name or something, which I wonder, because I think he worked for he worked for the CIA. I think his name is John Childers, but anyway, and he's my children's father. And so she's the aunt. She got me out there, and when I got to Dallas, I called her, and she told me I was no longer welcome. Well, I got back, and I had no apartment. The people that run the Laurelwood apartment back in 78, 79, 80, when this happened, she told me, the manager did, that her uncle had been in charge of the Patty Hearst kidnapping. So the Hearst, you got a whole conglomerate of people that were Illuminati or Freemasons, and they got in on the takedown of my dad and my kidnapping and bringing me to this country. Joe Kennedy, JFK helped in it. So anyway, I am assuming that this manager was a part of this whole thing, and she allowed it to happen, and it was illegal. But they almost killed me April Fool Day of 80, and I was taken across the state line. I was in bad condition. I should have died, to Huntsville, Alabama, where I worked for the district attorney, Fred Simpson. And I want to get into this part. I was out at Larry Flint's during a campaign. I'm leaving out a horror story. There's no way I can put any more of it up. But I was out at Mr. Flint's because he had been shot by a program shooter, and I was writing about mind control murders done in patterns, and he was shot March the 6th of 78. And I'd never met Mr. Flint, but he flew me out there, did a campaign to replace one of the doctors Congressman Larry McDonald had written about. He went down in the KAL. So any of this, any of it, you can check. You'd have to have a group of investigators to go through my life and check files, but you'll find it's true. So to this persons that have called names, well, everything I've said happens to be true. Too bad somebody has to resort because they don't like what I'm saying. I don't like what happened to me either. But anyway, I worked for the district attorney, and then later I worked for computer science and worked on manuals, Navy manuals, and then I couldn't get jobs anymore. And I went to D.C. and turned the book over, that letter that I'd written, a letter from the FBI, and where Revell, it went before their board, and so in other words, it was really discussed taking my book. And they didn't, but I carried all this in the book, and I had no money. So I was literally carrying stuff that I couldn't, it was a lot to carry, and I took it to the executive office at the White House. And you go in and you have to sign into this huge book that's got all these pages in it. And I handed it to the man that came out and took it, told me to sign the ledger. And it was President Reagan's son that's adopted, and he's he's a host on radio, And anyway, a lot happened when I left. I had a letter from the FBI on the front of it, and then I had a letter about the book and everything from Revell that you could see there. And then the book and some other documents were inside. So there was never any doubt about it. But then the world should see what was done to me later. Anyway, I've tried since my husband died. He remarried. And he had my apartment, remember. But here's the odd thing. While I was going to his sister's, this transpired. He was allowed to take my apartment. and it was in the same complex, so it was the same manager, and used my deposit. My lease was gone. I had no, I had about 6 months left on the lease, or 5 months at least. So there was no misunderstanding. So I got back no apartment, and that happened to me. The antifreeze was put in me, and I was almost killed, murdered. I should have died, is the whole point, and then taken across the state line. But there was a tox screen that was finally done, this was on April Fool Day, which was Tuesday. I was transported illegally across the state line. The Friday, which was Saturday, Easter was on Sunday, and the tox screen was finally done on Wednesday. And I couldn't get it, but my ex-husband now went in and got it and gave it to me, and it showed just what I've said in it. So I'm not going to get into that anymore. I wanted to say this about, though, I've tried with all the things that have been done to me, that I have no civil rights. I'm really a hostage and have been. I am who I said, the daughter of Edward VIII, and I'm Victoria II, because of an addendum that was added, just like in my divorce. So my husband did stuff that he married me. He knew who I am, that was kidnapped. I didn't at the time. I found out after the campaign in '83 and after I was out at Mr. Flint's, and I could remember quite a bit then about me being kidnapped, even though I was 2 years old. And so all my money, I want to say this, for a reason. I have been kept penniless and homeless, and I have gone through things that, it's unbelievable, with people knowing about it, made a beggar out of me. I lived on the Appalachian Trail and starved and frozen and run back to it when I'm kept penniless and run from place to place, deliberately. And I've put all this up on how it's done, and even give reference to who said it, like my word isn't good or something. But there's no way I can't get, that's been ruined. I can't get HUD. Well, I could get one. I should be able to. Isn't it odd? I've got to say I passed the background check, and I should be able to get a HUD. It's the only thing I could afford, and I can't get that. And so I can't pay the bills when I have been allowed to go to the emergency room or go to the doctor, and they pile up, and my health is bad. I don't have the money. How am I going to pay these bills? I've paid my rent. Let me say this. Everywhere I've lived, I've paid the rent exactly on time. There may have been a couple times through the years I was a day late, and that's it. So it's kind of hard to sit. And now then I'm subject to tomorrow, because some things were done to me, and there's no way. I was bounced around again. They've kept me with no base, okay? Which is hard if you ever stop and think about it. I have no base, and the law doesn't come and help me. They're part of the mess. So it's like floundering and trying to get help, and the agencies are shut down. I don't know if ongoing investigation is handed to them and they go along with it, or they're compromised because their children have committed a crime, and the law enforcement gets something on them, and they will go either way. They'll do whatever they're told to do to keep even though it's illegal. Okay, so I don't need to go into all that. You all can guess how it's handled. And so I'm subject tomorrow, and I've begged and got on the phone and begged again for a place to stay, and tomorrow I'll be out. And if I go back up to the mountain, the first person that's going to show up is somebody with the forestry, and I've been threatened, and I have only gone to like North Creek Campground, to where you pay, and it's got water and toilet and should be nice. You should see what's done to me there. With everybody knowing it. So if I go up to a certain place and it doesn't have water now, and the age I am and I can't get around, I can barely walk, they're going to use that I'm putting myself in jeopardy by going out there. And I can't get an attorney to bring any of this in court. Everybody's afraid of it because who's involved. And they don't really care about me. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. So I'm subject to that tomorrow. I went through last night knowing I was going to have to go. I don't have the money to go to another state. I've tried and been run back here. So I'm sitting here with no money enough for a cab to get me out where there's bears, where there's people that wouldn't mind what they do to me. And there's nowhere to go with it. It's like you'd have to evaporate to get out of the mess. It's so blocked. Now then, while I'm sitting here a while ago, and I feel so horrible, it builds up anxiety that I've got to try to drag my stuff, pay, and go out to the forest and try to live a few days, and then here will come a ranger and threaten me or whatever. So I'm not going to, that's about it. I'm sitting here so worried, and what you go through is, are you going to get water? I can't walk very good. So I got a phone call just now. I answered it because I'd asked a few people, and I really hated to. I don't ask people for money. I have asked the agencies that are more than willing to help anybody else except me. And I have asked them to help me with paying the rent a few times. Not very many. I've done it myself, done without food, where here in Roanoke and all over this country, they eat very well. Not one person has helped in paying my rent. One person did some years ago before I started getting any money, and I'm so sorry I'm not going to name them. I ended up calling them last night, leaving a message, and I'm sorry I had to ask them if they could. What I did was ask if they had a church that might help me pay my rent so I didn't have to go out in the woods. I didn't the forest and live till I can get my check. So they haven't called back. I called several people to see if they had a church or something, and the churches won't help. So I've got a hit on me, really, is what it is. And it's so sad to have to beg and have answer the phone, and there's somebody on the phone. It's a debt collector saying they suggest I call them immediately. How in the do you think I'm supposed to pay something when I don't even get enough money and I'm not allowed to live, and somebody's telling me I owe them? This country can't even begin to pay me what they owe me if they ever tried. God himself would have to step in and do it. And there was one other thing, and that's back to the divorce. I again tried to see where the policy went that was provided in my divorce. I will say that an agency said in '99 that his wife that he had remarried had my divorce papers with the attachment. So she very well knew that it was left to me. And I am assuming, because of the statement and what's transpired, that she has spent the money. She signed the policy and she has it. And I guess I'll leave it at that. I can't, and I recently again tried to get the law to help me, and they run me around again and said, well, you have to go to probate now, and then you'll have, well, can't even keep a place to live. I'm trying to get money.